To experience the quality sound of nothing but great rock and roll in crystal clear stereo, switch from AM to FM now.
I officially launch Brisbane's new FM station.
Brisbane's brand new FM, B105.
Get in, have fun, break the rules.
Broadcasting naked.
In the nude it's cold. It's a bit breezy for that, isn't it, boys?
And giving away breast surgery.
The B105 Morning Cruise Wham Man. Thank you, Pam.
For the B105 Christmas appeal, you have done it!
Thank you for raising money and helping sick kids.
How much have we raised over the years?
About $80.
Thank you.
We had one massive thing where we had a bit of a fight and we still did the show.
It wasn't a fight. Well, how can one punch be a fight?
Well, it was a good punch, I thought.
I'm still standing.
And sometimes even we don't know how to handle the bit. Long fellow.
Let's take 5.
And sometimes even we don't know how to handle long fellow. I go down.
Take 6. It's time for another B105 Gotcha call, and this one is rude.
Warning.
Oh, you do the warning.
Hello. Is anybody in there, Ian? Did someone just hit you in the face with a shovel?
I've woken up, it's all right.
Sorry.
Rapport, me and you.
It's the biggest show in town with Mac and Wazza.
Mr. Kyle Sanderlands, hello.
Gentlemen, hello, welcome, hello. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, mate, my pleasure. As soon as it's got Jamie's name into it, it always pricks my interest, either anything written, anything about him, anything about aggro, I'm always all over it. I'm broadcasting now only to the superfan. And I was a super fan of Jamie, so I'd listen no matter what. I'd never have changed the station. I wasn't one of those flip-floppers that would just see what Triple M's doing. Never. I'd listen to every fucking ad. I'd know everything. I'd be singing the jingles. I was a monster mental. I was a super fan lunatic. The only one fan worse than me is the slightly handicapped one with the faded logo on with the boombox attached to the front of their bike. They are more of a fan than me. I was just one level under them, but loved it just as much.
Did you know Waz's relationship with aggro?
No, what is it?
I got to rebuild aggro for Jamie.
When was this?
Back in 2000. So I think the aggro I built now for Jamie has been in service longer than the original aggro.
Oh, wow. Mate, I was fortunate enough maybe 3 months ago, Jamie was in Sydney, so we caught up for lunch and we chatting, and he had his daughter there and Brad March was there, so like we're all sort of an old boys' school. And then he fucking produces the puppet out of a bag all of a sudden. Oh, mate. Well, and he turned it around and he said, and he goes, go on. He said, not many fists have been up this arse. So I slowly inserted my fist in and I made a groan while I was doing it, which he found quite funny.
So Wazza keeps a spare of aggro at home. So there's a double and it lives in a glass cabinet in his house.
Are you kidding?
No, it's because Jamie stuffs, around with aggro quite a bit. So whenever something fucks up, he'll call me up. Wazza, I need to send aggro up to you, mate. So he just sends them up, and I've got one waiting just to send straight down in the post pack to him.
Oh, Sperry. Oh, mate. Mate, you know what? I'd pay a lot of money to have one of those puppets just at home here, but I know it's sacrilegious. The funny thing is when he came down for lunch and he said, and I said to my missus, I said, I'm going to have, lunch with Jamie Dunn. We're going to have a lunch. And, she knew the background of how much I loved him and like he inspired me to get into radio in the first place. And she knew all these stories. Anytime I'd cross paths with him over the years, she already knew. Probably heard it so many times, she's starting to roll her eyes. Because he said to me, you want to fly down and have lunch with you? And I thought, why would he want to fly down just to have lunch with me? And I thought, fuck, he must be doing something else. So I said to Brad March, what's he doing down here? He said, he's come down to have lunch with you. He's coming straight from the airport. We're going to have lunch, then he's going to fly back home. And I thought, fuck, he's given me the puppet. He's gonna hand, because years ago when I was like, I was a homeless kid still, and I was living in Brisbane. And I was 4BK I used to listen to before I went to B105. I banged on his door one day as he was leaving the station. I would have looked like a rat, street kid, like raggy clothes, real Tom Sawyer looking vibe about me. And I'd tried to perfect the voice, and I was like, must have been 16 or something. And I said to him, hey, I said, you're working 7 days a week. You're doing this show. I love it. And he's like, yeah, thanks, mate. Like waiting to pull out into the traffic. And I said, and you're working on the weekends at Westfield doing the aggro thing. And then I went, why don't you get me to do aggro's voice? I can do it, Mr. Dunn. And then he looked at me and he went, and I was a kid, so it would have been shithouse. And he gave me a card and he said, call my office and make an appointment. So I made him an appointment. I pestered the poor lady at his office, which was just down the road from the radio. And he had the dolls and the show bags, all this shit going on in these early days. Puppets, key rings, fucking anything. It was on Fruit Loops. It was every fucking thing you could put that doll on, it was on. And I'd convinced myself this is my road into media, being the voice of aggro on the weekends. Anyway, that was a ludicrous suggestion, because I would have been a child, and I would have thought it sounded like aggro, would have sounded nothing like aggro. But he took the time to meet me, see me, but he said, oh, we can't do that, I like doing it. And almost like I wanted him to give me his child. And I left there so disheveled. I thought, fuck, I can't believe he doesn't want to do it. And then years and years later, he's rung me up, since I've been in Sydney with Jackie for years and years, and he goes, I should have fucking taken 10% from day one from you. I would have been able to retire years and years ago. And we have a big laugh about that.
Did you think that he was going to hand the mantle on to you and go, can you be the new voice of aggro?
I did. I thought, he's near death and he's fucking given me the puppet. I'm finally going to come full circle. I will be my original media idea. Anyway, and he told me, he goes, I know you think you're going to get the fucking puppet, but I've got life left in me yet. And I thought, oh, fuck, he knows.
You were in Brisbane when B105 launched from 4BK to B105, and you saw how huge that was. Did that influence you when you talked to Kiss about how they were going to launch?
Absolutely, because that to me was the best radio launch of all time anywhere on earth. That all those Black Thunders, I knew about FM 104, which was the FM station in Brisbane prior to B105, but didn't give a shit. Like, they were there, and I didn't really give a fuck. I don't even know what I listened to, but I'd listen to 4BK because Mum did, and I'd ring up the fucking secrets, all these stupid things they'd do. And when that launched, I just used to chase those cars around like I was obsessed. And if they were at an event, they wanted to be noticed. And as I got into radio more and more, in like little towns like Mackay, I'd try and put on what B105 would do at the little Mackay show. And people would be like, oh, we don't have the money for that. And I was like, but we must. This is what radio does. We must have a giant inflatable fucking this and that. We must have the logo on the Ferris wheel. And they were like, oh, no, you get a little tent here and someone sits behind a card table. I was like, fuck that shit. I'd buy desks from secondhand shops, have spray paint them white and get the logo put on it, and people are like, wow, that looks much better than the collapsible car. And I'm like, yes, it does. And I tried to make the B105 vibe in these little regional towns because I thought they did everything perfectly, always.
How many Black Thunders did they have on the streets back then? I saw a photo the other day back then, and it looked like 20 different, just all the same cars.
Yeah. Well, I think Brisbane, I know, had 6 black ones. Then they had 2 white news ones that had the source written on the side. And I thought that was unbelievable. Like the news, they called this news the source back then. But who knows how many they've had up to us. In Sydney, they had fucking heaps. I've had a Triple M photo once when they brought all the Explorers at the same time. I don't know. They had them all on an airport runway. And there would have been fucking 40 of those all in a row.
Those first Black Thunders that didn't have doors at the back, we've been trying to work it out, and I think it was a Nissan Pathfinder.
Yes, it was. Yep. After the Pathfinders, because I stole a Pathfinder, one of the Black Thunders, from a servo once and had it for 3 days. That's how obsessed I was, like a lunatic. And then after I got rid of that, I impersonated a police officer for a year with a badge and everything. I was a real fantasizer. Should have been in prison, really, but somehow haven't. And then after those Pathfinders, I think they were a Ford something, but they looked like the Nissan Patrol short wheelbases, and they had the no logo on the grill. They'd replaced that with the B105 logo, and I thought that was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. I was like, they've even replaced the fucking badge with the B105 logo. I was obsessed.
Kyle, people talk about, meeting your heroes, and sometimes they say you should never meet your heroes. What was it like when you finally met Jamie after holding such a high regard for him?
Well, I think because of the greatness of radio is that, and I feel it sometimes when I meet people that I don't know, and it works me thinking, I've listened to Jamie for so long, you do actually know them. So it's very odd because you feel that, and there's obviously parts you don't know, like we don't know what face he pulls when he masturbates, who knows? But who wants to know? Maybe we want to, I don't know, now I'm thinking about, do we want, no, okay, forget that. But you think you know him, and he doesn't know me as well, but then he said to me at that lunch the other month, he said he's been listening, and when he doesn't hear, his daughter fills him in, and they say, I fucking did that, and he did that, and he said, it's fun to listen to. He goes, I love the balls. He goes, like, you've got bigger balls. And I said, no, times have changed. I said, I walk the tightrope of the law of what we're allowed to do and say, and how often we're allowed to fucking say this and that. And he goes, I just love the balls. He goes, like, sometimes, he said, I'm listening, and in my mind I think, fuck, I'd say this, but I wouldn't have said it on air. And he goes, and you'll just fucking say it on air. And I said, but listening to someone like Jamie, the quick wit, as a listener, I'd be listening to the morning crew, and he'd say something exactly the same time as I'd think it, and I think people love that. You connect to that. He's the funny guy at the barbecue. He's like the one everyone looks at when you're anywhere. And I thought, I've got a bit of that in me. I was the class clown. I was always because I didn't learn anything at school because I went to 13 different primary schools. So I was always like feeling a bit dumb. And so I'd make a joke or, say something inappropriate. And it was really just to duck and weave my dumbness. But that wit I admired from him, and it was always hilarious. And then I think that sort of paved the way for me to actually say out loud what I was thinking, and I've done pretty well out of it. Not well enough to give him that 10%. He had his fucking chance when I knocked on his door, and he said no. So fuck him.
Jamie Dunn, thank you very much for joining us.
Hello. That's what happens to old radio guys. You're free all the time.
I don't believe it.
I think he's been a little bit busy. You've been doing your late night show at the moment, Jamie.
Oh, yeah, Aggro Up Late. That's been surprisingly well received. I mean, I guess retro is in.
Yes.
And Aggro was in your lounge room before you went to school and when you came home from school.
Hello?
Julie.
Yes.
It's Aggro again.
Oh, hello, Aggro.
How are you doing?
Oh, okay, thank you.
And how's young Blake?
Well, he's still in bed at the moment, actually. He's not actually watching your show at the moment. But...
that's all right. I'm on the radio in Brisbane anyway.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, with the morning crew.
So I guess he's got a cornerstone of iconic kind of characterism. And we did Mackay and pulled about 800 people.
Wow.
Which I know.
That's great.
When you think you're a has-been and all of a sudden there's bums on seats, it's interesting. And we only got 29 complaints out of those 800.
Well, Jamie, I went and saw you, as you know, in Bundaberg, and I looked around, and as far as I could see, the house was pretty full as well. So the popularity with seeing Aggro Up Late is just amazing. And when you say retro is back in, I don't think Aggro really ever went out of fashion, did he?
Well, I think that because he was on television so regularly, and also he had, a good attitude. He was like, he appealed to kids, parents, grandparents. He kind of went through the kids to the adults. It was back then there wasn't as many committees around looking to assassinate you for being ad-libish.
Yes.
I was on air long enough for the public to get my personality, and understand, when I was being flippant or I was being sarcastic or, and relaxed with it. And once they understand who you are and, and get into you, then the ratings come. And once you got ratings, everyone thinks your ideas are wonderful. If you don't have ratings, they go, why are we doing this? But if you've got ratings, they think you know something they don't.
Yeah. But you're so humble about it. Like you say, if you're on it long enough, you were on there for 16 years, and those 16 years were some of the highest ratings of any show in Brisbane at the time.
I know. When I first signed with, say, 4BK, they said to me, well, we're looking at, it was $50,000, I think they paid me, plus $2,000 a point above 7%, because 4BK was on 7% when I signed with them. So they were AM changing to FM and going up against FM 104, Triple M. And I remember being called into the office and the guy going, of course, we'll do incentives. And I kind of went, incentives? And he said, yeah, $2,000 a point over 7%. And I said, well, I don't know about incentives. And the guy goes, oh, look, you're definitely going to go up 2 points. I said, well, why don't you pay me $4,000 and make it 9 that we go above? And no, they didn't want to do that. But the first incentive payment, like when 4BK changed to B105, the first rating went from 7% to 29%.
Wow.
I know.
We have to mention International Nude Day. Can you tell us a bit more about that one?
In the nude it's cold. It's a bit breezy for that, isn't it, boys?
That was one of my better ideas. I don't know why I came up with it, but and why it hasn't been, well, at the time, why it hadn't been done before. I just remember being in the meeting going, what about International Nude Day? We broadcast in the nude. And, we had a program manager, Brad March, who was, just fantastic. And in that if you had an idea, he would run with it straight away. And he did. He put 3 or 4 days of full pages of Ian Skippon and I in the nude. We had nude photographs taken almost immediately. And the idea was that we broadcast in the nude. Well, the publicity that came from it was, I was saying the other day we got mentions in Cashbox and Billboard magazines in the States out of Brisbane, And it was a classic. The guest we chose was Dick Johnson, which I thought was funny.
A guy with 2 names that both mean penis. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And, we did it, and Ian was kind of a little bit embarrassed. He came in with a codpiece on in the day, and we'd blocked out all the windows in the studio, so it was only me and him. But I will tell you the story. I know I've told it before, but anyway, I said, Ian, there's only you and me in here, and we need to be broadcasting in the nude if we're going to do it right. So get the codpiece off. And he said, it's just, I'm embarrassed, Jamie. I've got a rather large ball bag. And I said, for God's sake, look at mine. It's got a bend and it's horrible, And it's only me and you, so take it off. So he took it off, and I went, oh, my God, look at the size of your ball bag, and pointed at it. But, no, it was very, very successful. And they're the sort of crazy ideas that kind of work. We had a cash prize for anyone that would drive to the studio naked. And we had a couple, a guy and a girl drove from Virginia into Bowen Hills to B105 naked. Jeez. And, I know, and that got us a full page in People magazine. And
imagine doing that today. They'd have to catch an Uber in naked, wouldn't they?
I think they'd bring the lawyers in and, they'd say, you can't do this.
No.
Whereas B105 was such fertile ground for any idea, and some work, some don't, It's all good.
Why do you think it did work at the time, Jamie? Why did all this stuff just come together and just work so well, and knowing it wouldn't work today?
Well, let me go to Kyle Sandilands, okay? And I think he's living proof the stuff we did work. In his book, he's got a little paragraph talking about me. My ego loves that.
I love Jamie Dunn. He's the reason I got into radio.
I know.
Now, a lot of people will remember him. He was in radio in Sydney on Today FM, back with Wendy Harmer.
But what he said, the context of what he said was, when he was listening to B105, I didn't sound like a radio person. I just sounded like someone he knew, like a friend.
Things not to take to the People's Day at Eka.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Number 4, don't take Bernard King because all he wants to do is ride the whizzer.
And that's because what you're hearing now is what used to go on air. Like I don't have a radio voice. You know how they round their voice and smile when they talk.
Yes.
So I was just me.
Yep.
And that's what appealed to her. And I think that's what appealed to the rest of Brisbane. Plus, when we did the Christmas appeal, which ran for about 11 years and was just incredibly successful to raise money for the Children's Hospital, I had some input in that. And the first time they came to us looking for money, we were nervous we wouldn't make $5,000. But it went better than that. And the reason it went better than that was because when we sat around, I said, well, I don't want people giving money and just building a big bank of money and then someone buys a promo car for the promo person.
Yeah.
I want a list from the Children's Hospital of the equipment they need, and then we'll go through that list and get what they need, and when people stop giving, that's the end of the list.
Yeah.
And that was the secret to it, because it was every day. It was, they knew if you gave $50 on Tuesday, you were raising money for a burns unit that was going to cost like $200,000. And we got it, and we got it from, I remember the salespeople going out to the Logan motorway when it was a tollway, and they all went out and manned the toll booths, and it was the best thing that ever happened to them because they saw the listener.
Yes.
The plumber in the crappy ute that could hardly run, pulling them up and giving $100 cash for the Children's Hospital. And it just connected. And the reason it connected was because there was no bullshit involved in it. It was just, the money you gave definitely went to the Children's Hospital. And, my little boy Jackson, before Christmas, had issues with his breathing, and he got this thing called RSI, which is not the wrist thing, but it's a respiratory thing. And he went into intensive care and onto a ventilator, and I'm sitting in intensive care and watching my son on this ventilator, and on the ventilator is a sticker that said, bought by the people of Brisbane through the B105 Christmas appeal. And I was just like floored, absolutely floored. But that was no one got a promo car, but the hospital got what it needed. And we would raise money for, like a burns blanket would be, $80. And we bought dozens of those. And when we'd finished buying the dozen, then we moved on to the, $300,000 laser surgery unit for brain surgery. And, it was just amazing. I always think that radio and television can be superficial in that, okay, radio want the full page. They want the news story. They want B105 has done a wonderful thing. They want to take credit for all of that. But I always think that the end result, no matter what, the end result was we got the money for the kids. We got the money for the equipment. We said what equipment we were raising money for, and people knew that we bought it because from my own experience, in intensive care with my kid, I'm sitting there reading it and I'm thinking, my God, we created this. It's amazing.
And with us is Shane Webke.
95, 96, I'd become a first grader. And shortly after that, I actually got a bit of a gig with B105. We used to do like a review and a preview of the games because they were a sponsor of the Bronx. And they were enormous. And Jamie Dunn, Ian Skiffen, they were just fiery. And from my memory, and possibly because I was involved, we were winning the ratings. That's only my.
Don't tell Jamie that.
Anyway, no, Jamie Dunn might disagree. But anyway, I got this job courtesy of being a Bronco to do this review and preview, and I shared it with Gordon Tallis actually, and it was just. They're really good times because the Bronx are playing really well. We won in '97, we won in '98, we won in 2000. And so it was a hastening time for the club, but also for B105. I think that was probably some of their best years. And certainly Jamie Dunn, the likes of Jamie Dunn, was at the peak of his powers. And it was an amazing thing to be part of, actually. I was just a kid from the bush, I suppose, and all of a sudden I'm going into radio stations and talking, and he'd do aggro. It was hilarious. The Bronx were firing back then, and mate, people were incredibly behind us. And that meant they wanted to extend generosity and all the rest of it. And blokes like Johnny Kilroy, Char-Chars, back then they was all kicking all that off. And then, of course, City Rowers, the great City Rowers. I mean, that was where we always went after games. And so much so that when we flew home from away games, we'd still go back there. Brisbane was really coming into its own too, I think. Brisbane was coming of age, I think. And we were a bit part of that, I suppose. And Broncos were coming of age at that point in time and really cementing ourselves as a powerhouse in the rugby league world. And that was sort of alongside Brisbane starting to really become a dynamic sort of a city.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I was talking to Skip the other day about when you came on board, and he said, Webby was so great. He said he'd go to the change room, and he said he'd bring the tape recorder with him. He said he'd just get so much great intel.
Yeah, that was one of the more interesting parts of it. A lot of that stuff didn't make it on air, as you would appreciate, because some of the boys were a bit unkind because, look, it was part of it. I had to take me do me little vox pops and everything, and it was a bit nerve-wracking, because I was only pretty young. And I'm asking blokes like Alfie Langer, who were just completely unkind. But no, we had some hilarious stuff. And I pray that no one ever sort of kept those recordings because, oh, wow.
I've got them right now. I'm going to play them back.
I'll be leaving here.
No, you're too big a bloke for me to pick that fight. Webby, Ian was saying how important it was to have the Broncos on side and what a big deal it was, especially because they were all pretty much on the same team, well, until Wally went to the Seagulls, and because that really upset Jamie that the Broncos let him go.
Jamie was particularly vocal about things like that. What a quick-witted bloke he is. And we actually became good mates, and I did a few bits and pieces with him at EBMC and different things, and really wonderful, kind bloke too. Like, if you got on his bad side, particularly on air, he'd cut you to shreds. But he was a really, really good, kind bloke who helped a lot of people that no one would ever hear about. It was a great time to be part of the Broncos, but little offshoots like that, which were afforded players like me, that is going to do that little job for B105, actually really helped in my life after footy, if you like, where I went on to go to work for Channel 7 and things like that. The experience that I got working with B105 and different things like that allowed you to feel more comfortable in that public realm. And so it really helped. And that was some of the earliest stuff that I did in the public world, if you like. It couldn't have been better people to learn from.
You remember Piney the Pie Man? He does the pie reviews.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're pulling out names from everywhere today.
Well, this is the thing about this show. It just leads you down these trails. We were trying to track down the bush pig, right?
The first event is the Cowpat Chuck.
Can I just say that third one there looks a bit soft? Run your fingers through.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he took a bite.
Can we just explain
He took a bite of a cowpat. Oh, my God. He took a bite of a cowpat. Not only does he talk it, he eats it.
It's only grass.
He's eaten it. It's in his teeth.
It's only grass.
Oh, that is off. Oh.
That's just dry grass.
Oh, that's just dry grass. Oh.
Got a bit of dirt in it.
It's been through 4 stomachs, hasn't it?
Very gritty.
Oh, the bush pig, of course. Yes.
It's like trying to trap a bush pig at this point, So, talking to Skip, Skip goes, Piney knows where he is. Long story short, Piney goes, oh, yeah, he lives down the road from me in Noosa. Yes, we found him.
He was huge back then.
Massive.
I'd forgotten about him, but he was massive. Like the bush pig, of course. I had a great affinity with him because I was from the bush myself. I loved him. I thought he was just hilarious. And talk about, being marginally politically incorrect. He was probably the pin-up boy of that at that point. But anyway, he gave him money. It was great.
He was pretty much Jackass before Jackass was even a thing.
That's exactly right. You're right about that. And I remember, he wasn't frightened of a Forex either. And from time to time, he might have done some radio with a few on board, which was very, very humorous.
The one Skip said to me, the time when we realised he had to give it away was because they had Bill Clinton up north, and it was in some resort, and the guy had no fear up until this point. Apparently, he'd slipped under some barbed wire, and so now you're talking about American security. You can only imagine what the Secret Service is like. And he's on the phone, and they're going, all right, climb under the fence, get under there, mate. What can you see? What can you see? And then the station gets some call back that goes, there's a red dot on your mate's head right now. He might want to turn around. That was kind of, Skip was like, that was the day we went, oh yeah, maybe some of this stuff we should kind of look at before we do it again. Webby, hopefully we'll keep you in on this chain and let you know how we track everyone down and what happens.
That'll be great. Perhaps you should go and take the last step required and organise a reunion.
Well, apparently they had one sometime just before the pandemic.
Oh, well, okay. This is interesting.
Yeah.
You mustn't have been able to find me because I'm not, obviously I work for Channel 7, pretty visible, Yeah, no, that'll be good. That'll be real good because they can stick it in their ass. If I wasn't good enough for the first one, I ain't coming back. I knew. And see, that's done. That's Jamie done all over. He was threatened by me the minute I walked into that studio and it never left me. And so this horrible jealousy he's got, look at this. This makes sense now. It's all coming back now, boys. Oh, yeah. Well, I might have said something unkind about Agro once. He never forgot it. I mean, give me a break, Jamie. Invite me to the reunions. I was part of the team. Thanks for, firstly, bringing in all these wonderful memories, and then it's descended into me being ostracised from the team. I was never welcome in it, obviously, because you don't get invited to the reunion. Really, they never wanted you in the first place. So, thanks for nothing. Thanks for nothing. Oh, Greg. No, well, thanks. You know what? That's made me feel about as good as a cold cup of tea.
Jesus, I never thought it would go this way, but it looks like it has. We've created enemies. While
you haven't upset me. You've just brought me into reality. I was feeling the 90s in a very different light. Well, I know to change now, don't I?
Macca.
Hello.
How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
That's good. That'll change in a minute.
Skip, when you were doing breakfast on KQ and before that doing breakfast on 4BK, I have found out recently, because I'm currently living in the hometown of Bundaberg, that you were on good old 4BU all those years ago. What sort of shift were you pulling on BU?
I was doing nighttime, some afternoons, and then I did breakfast for a while when Jimmy Lonsdale went on holidays.
Let's talk about when you hit B105. You had a birthday come up at the same time the station launched, right?
Yeah, I did, yeah. We launched virtually on my birthday. I turned 40 when we launched.
When you look at the show, that was a seasoned show. You guys were all professionals that had been around. That has to be a part of the magic, right?
Do you know, I'd known Jamie before because Jamie, I was the content director or the program director at 4KQ for a while. We were playing country music then. And Jamie had come back from Los Angeles and he had his Jamie Come Home, Thank You Linesman, Thank You Bald Boys album.
Yep.
He was also a record rep for Astor Records. So he'd come into the station, he's flogged Astor Records, you know. But I knew Jamie. But when we had the opportunity, and it sort of came out of left field to work as part of the morning crew on 4BK, it was then when Austereo bought the station, and they phoned me and said, come on over, you're going to join us. We're driving through the Gabba and we've just bought the station. This is Greg Smith was telling me. When are you going to join us? So you're going to come over and do mornings? I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll only come if I can do breakfast. He said, right, are you doing breakfast? So that was it. So I was there, and then Bernie Britton was working with Donna and I'd never met Donna or Bernie, so it was all new. And Jamie joined a little bit after, because he was up in Hong Kong. I think somebody had seen him doing an agro show up in Darwin, and they said, this guy's good. But it's funny, when I left 4KQ, Jamie had rung me on air. I don't know how, I think I got people to do weather and stuff when I was at 4KQ doing breakfast, and Jamie did a weather for me or something, and we were talking, and then they'd let me stay at 4KQ even though I'd resigned to go to 4BK because I'd been at KQ 16 years. So, and I wasn't going to, go rabbiting on about the new station, but they said, stay on air. And Jamie said, oh, you've got something good happening. And I said, well, how are you going? So I've got nothing happening for me. But having known Jamie for a long time now, he'd always say that sort of thing. Oh, I'm on the bones of my bum, I've got nothing going on. But in the meantime, he's pocketing everything.
Yes.
So that's his modus operandi. So he joined, but it was, I don't know if it was because I knew Jamie before, but we had chemistry, and you cannot manufacture chemistry. I don't care if you're doing radio or television, like breakfast shows on TV, people thrown together. You can't manufacture chemistry. And you would have heard it. I mean, you hear people on air together and you think, oh, my God, those people don't work. Or you see them on TV and you think, oh, God, that's painful. Like Sunrise on Channel 7, chemistry, absolute chemistry. They interchange all those people, and they all, whether they get on or not behind the scenes, I don't care, but they have chemistry for the moment. And, see other stations, you go, trying hard but not really getting there. And we had this chemistry. And Jamie and I don't know, with timing and all that sort of thing, it was just I could get stuff out of him and we'd just play each other. I knew the button to push for him and sometimes the wrong button, pushing and got the wrong reaction from him. But, it was just magical stuff. And I have so much great memories of the radio that we were able to do with Donna originally and then with Robin and Penny. I was very, very lucky.
It was a special time as well in Brisbane. It was really coming of age, wasn't it?
I went to 4BK. It was just after Expo. And they say that, Expo was a town changing into a city for Brisbane. So we certainly grew up after Expo. And we came on the block when 4BK converted to B105. It was a time when the Broncos had come in.
Yes.
Bernie Power Brewing, Goss Government. So there was all this stuff happening, and we were part of it, and we were partners with Power Brewing and the Broncos. And when we had our launch, Bernie Power was at the launch with Wayne Goss, and Wally was there, and the Broncos were part of our DNA as well.
I heard the launch the other day. Somebody put it up on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Ian Skippen from the B105 FM morning crew to officially launch Brisbane's new FM station, B105 FM.
And you were the first voice on the station.
No.
Not true.
It was Rob McCasker.
Oh, Rock the Casbah?
Rob McCasker.
We're Brisbane's brand new FM station, B105. Rob McCasker here this afternoon, and quite frankly, a bit of a thrill. It's about 3:15, and we're rolling through 30 minutes of nothing but great rock and roll.
Rob gave me my gig at Hot Tomato on the Gold Coast.
And you still talk to him?
I haven't heard from Rob in ages.
I don't know what Rob's doing now. He was a good job. Good broadcaster.
Yeah, he was doing brekkie when I left there. He went over to WA. He's been working in WA.
All right.
After you were comfortably winning every ratings that was out and about, did you guys set out to break any rules of radio, or were you more focused on sticking to that formula?
We didn't know there were rules was.
Right.
So we broke them every day. We were given, and I say this, we were so lucky to have content directors, program directors, still hard to find a CD, like Brad March, who just got off on the fact that we could do whatever we wanted to do, but then we had to have a reason for doing it. He'd say, I don't care, there's things that you have to do. You can break the rules, but as long as you explain why you broke them. So he said, just go and have fun. So we set out every day, and we didn't really have an absolute plan of attack. Early days, we didn't even have a producer. We were producing ourselves, and I really fought hard. I thought, we don't need a freaking producer. We produce ourselves. But anyway, we got one, and then we ended up having two. And we just broke rules, and sometimes we didn't even know there was a rule that we were breaking. We just did it.
So what would you say some of your biggest challenges were then in your role?
Staying focused, I guess, amidst all the mayhem that was in the studio.
Keeping Jamie in check?
No, Jamie was fine.
Yeah.
Keeping Donna in check was more of a bloody... That was an issue.
Yeah.
Because she'd arrive, and Jamie and I would have been there since early, Sparrowfar, and Donna would arrive, and in the end, they'd call Donna and say, the boys are preparing stuff. She said, well, they just get in early and read the paper. I said, yeah, well, that's what we're doing. We're finding out what is happening in the city and what we can latch on to, what we can get Alfie to call about or Lord Mayor Jim to talk about or whatever. And because I was moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, it was sometimes not hitting the right button or the right thing because I was using 2 tape decks to record our phone calls. So I'd drop edit on the go, or I had a splicing block and I'd splice as we went. So
wow.
Because we were recording all our phone calls. So that's why I stood up in the end, and I was more comfortable standing up because I was on the move all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But Jamie would say, if someone would come and say, we want to do this, and he said, no, don't talk to me, talk to Skip. Because I had to call the shots.
You're running the show, yeah.
He knows what we're doing, hopefully.
Well, Skip, when it comes to the show, you've talked about it as an ensemble before. There was a number of different moving parts to it. You've got writers like Gibbo and his wife. You've got Ian Calder there. Yep. Jamie has talked about it to us, about you writing with him, helping with sketches, things like that. It was really a cavalcade of stars working together, right?
Yeah, it was. And, everyone knew their role. And that, well, sometimes, and this is what I always got into trouble about, because Brad Much would say, stick to your role. You're not funny. Jamie's the funny man. And sometimes Jamie would be listening to Air Check and Brad would go, and he'd slap his thigh and go, Jamie, that was so funny. And Jamie would go, yeah, it was Skip's line. He gave it to me. Oh.
Nice.
Okay. Right. So I didn't get stuff who got the laugh as long as we got one. But everyone within that, we would say of a morning to Ian Calder, Jim Sawley's in the paper this morning doing da-da-da-da-da. So when Ian would ring us and go live at 7 o'clock or just after the 7 o'clock news, now we had no idea what he was going to be doing.
Hello.
Lord Mayor
Jim.
Look, today's phone call comes with a warning.
Yeah?
I've got to put this disclaimer on it before we start.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. This phone call contains material which may disturb some people. Lord Mayor Jim recommends listening by mature audiences only who've already had their breakfasts.
And he'd go, well, what about this and this and that and that? And we just went along with him, and we'd lead him into stuff and comment on what he was saying. But we had no idea what he was going to do.
Yeah, I had an interesting one about Lord Mayor Jim, the real one, and the radio one. In the beginning, the real Lord Mayor, Jim Sawley, wasn't super happy about Jim.
He hated it. And Graham Stark, who was his media guy at the time, Jim was hopping, he didn't like it. So, because it was taking the piss.
Yeah.
But Graham Stark said, listen, this is the best publicity you're going to get every morning, prime time on the biggest thing in Brisbane radio, and you own it every morning at 7 o'clock. And they are comedically giving your message that you have spoken about or been in the news on telly about the night before, and they are giving you more time the next morning with a comedic spin on it. What don't you get about that? What's not to like?
Mm-hmm.
But when it came, we'd be outside doing things, and Sawley would arrive, and he'd be looking around, where is he? Where is he? And Ian Calder would be hiding under a rock. Ian is so shy, brilliant actor, just great at what he did, and he just, you could say, Ian, can you give us an Alfie this morning on, he kicked, whatever, or he set up 4 plays on the weekend, and can you do? So he'd ring as Alfie. Yeah, how you going? How's it going, So he was just, but once again, we didn't know. We knew what the subject was or what we'd given him, but we didn't know what he was going to do. So we would just, and the same with Hector Pascal's, it just sort of happened. The harp would go, we'd do Hector here, Jamie, yeah, right, okay. Oh, Mr. Skippin, I've been rear-ended the car park. Oh, my God. I said, I said, "Oh, that was terrible." Oh, he said it was so painful.
It's the biggest show in town with Mac and Wazza.